Jesse saw no sign of Dillard's patrol car and let out a breath. He pulled into the police chief's driveway, parked behind Linda's beat-up Ford Escort, and cut the engine. The house sat on a couple of nicely secluded acres backing up against the river, just on the outskirts of town. Everything had been recently renovated, new bricks and wraparound porch. A late model white Chevy Suburban sat in front of the 3-car garage. Nice house, nice car. Amazing what a man can afford on a townie's police salary these days. Jesse opened the door to get out and hesitated. What the hell am I doing? He realized it was easy to talk big in front of Mrs. Collins, but now that he was there, he didn't feel so cocky. He glanced up at the road, keeping an eye out for the patrol car. Abby's gifts could wait. Always another day. He shook his head. I don't think so. She's my daughter, and this is Christmas. I'll be goddamned if I'm gonna be cowed by some old limp dick. He got out and felt naked, exposed. He glanced at the glove compartment, but something in his gut told him bringing the gun would be a bad idea. Instead, he walked around, lifted the gate on the camper, pushed his guitar aside, and pulled out 2 sacks of toys. He walked up the pathway, stashing the 2 bags behind the hedge, then mounted the porch. He pushed his hair back out of his face, straightened up his shirt, and pressed the doorbell. Deep chimes echoed from inside. A moment later, Linda opened the door with a big smile. The second she saw Jesse, her smile fell. She wore a plush lavender robe. Jesse noticed right away the frilly lingerie peeking out from beneath the robe. Santa bring you that? Linda shot him a cold look and tugged her robe closed. What are you doing here? Merry Christmas to you too, honey. You shouldn't be here. She glanced behind Jesse, her eyes anxious. He's gonna be back any time. I'm here to see my daughter. Jesse, you can't be making trouble. Linda lowered her voice. She's just looking for an excuse. He's just looking for an excuse. He'll take you in this time. You know what that'll mean. He did. There were times when the gigs were slow that Jesse picked up odd jobs to fill in. On more than one occasion, he'd run contraband for the general. The Boone County Sheriff was an honest man, wasn't on the general's payroll, didn't care much for Chief Dillard Deaton either. One night, the sheriff pulled Jesse over during a run, and that contraband turned out to be 3 kilos of weed. Jesse ended up in jail. Since it wasn't Jesse's first offense, the judge let him off with probation, and the stern warning that any more trouble and he'd serve hard time. Chief Deaton liked to remind Jesse about his probation, about what would happen if Jesse were to get out of line. Last I checked, Jesse said, it wasn't against the law for a man to visit his little girl on Christmas. Jesse, please go, I'm begging you. If he finds you here, it'll be bad. And Jesse caught note of panic, understood that she didn't mean bad just for him. Linda, you're 26. What are you doing with that old creep? Don't you do this. Not here. Not now. Well, okay, fine. But I'm still Abigail's father, and as such, I got some say in her welfare, and it don't set well with me, not one bit, that she's living under the roof of a man in cahoots with the general. Linda looked at him as though he'd lost his mind. Really? Are you kidding? I can't believe you even said that, she said. She laughed. Weren't you the one sitting in county jail just a couple months back? And for what? What was it, Jesse? Running drugs, I believe? Who exactly were you in cahoots with? Jesse flushed. That ain't the same, and you know it. She just stared at him. Besides, I didn't know it was drugs. Linda rolled her eyes and let out a snort. Jesse, I happen to know you aren't that stupid. Well, okay, I'll tell you what. I could move her into that little trailer of yours. That'll be a wonderful place to raise her, don't you think? Doesn't the fact that Dillard murdered his wife bother you at all? He did not. She shot back, a noticeable edge in her voice. That's just talk. Dillard told me what really happened. She emptied his bank account, took his car, and ran off. That's all there is to that. He was shattered by what that crazy woman did. That's one side of it too. Oh, that's one side of it. Too bad Mrs. Deaton ain't around to give her side. Too bad no one ever found hide nor hair of her after all these years. Jesse, what are you trying to do? Linda, don't move in with this guy. Please don't. Go back to your mama's. Let's give this one more chance, please. Jesse, I'm done waiting for you to grow up. There's got to be more to my life than watching you pick at that damn guitar of yours. I don't want to be raising a child myself while you're off playing some scuzzy honky-tonk. That ain't no kind of life. What happened to you, Linda? You used to believe in me, believe in my songs. How's that demo coming along, Jess? It's coming. Have you sent off any of your songs? Did you ever follow up with that DJ from Memphis, that Mr. Rand or Reed or whatever his name was? As I recall, he was real keen on your sound. I'm still working on it. Still working on it? Jesse, that was over 2 years ago. What's the excuse now? Ain't no excuse. Songs just aren't quite ready yet, that's all. How many years have I been hearing that? What you mean to say is you aren't quite ready yet, because them songs, they're good songs, and nobody's ever gonna know if you don't let them hear them. Jesse stared at his boots. Jesse, we've been over this until I'm sick of hearing myself say it. You aren't going nowhere, and so long as you aren't going nowhere so long as you do is keep playing to a bunch of drunks in those 2-bit bars. You want it, baby. You're gonna have to make it happen. You're gonna have to put yourself on the line. Look, Jess, some folks is gonna like what you do and some folks aren't. That's just the way it is. You don't go through life worrying about the ones that aren't. Jesse felt that was easy for Linda to say. She'd never cared a lick for what folks thought, and it was why she was such a good dancer, because she could just lose herself in the beat, just kick up her heels, not caring who was watching or what they might be thinking. She'd never been able to understand that it might be different for him, at least while he was performing. He couldn't get past all those eyes on him, watching his every move, couldn't get into the zone, into that magic place where the music and him were one and the same. So yes, perhaps she was right. Maybe he was afraid to put himself on the line, but maybe he'd learn that it was better to play good to a bunch of drunks instead of screwing up in front of people who give a damn. She let out a long sigh. You won't send your songs off to no one because you don't ever feel they're quite good enough, and you won't play in front of nobody that amounts to a hill of beans because they might look at you funny. Jesse, how can you expect me to believe you if you won't believe in yourself? Jesse just stared at her, tried to come up with a reply, something he hadn't said 100 times before. All I know is that I love you, Linda. Love you as hard as I can. Now you go ahead and look me in the eye and tell me you don't love me. Do it right now. If you can do it, if you can do that, then I'll leave. Then I'll leave you be. She met his eyes, opened her mouth, then closed it. Her lips set tight. Tears began to brim in her eyes. There's a little girl in there that needs some sort of stability in her life. She don't need a mom pulling double shifts at the laundromat. Don't need a daddy dragging in at 4 a.m. every morning. Can you understand that? Can you not see that there is more to consider here than just you and me? A tear fell down her face and she wiped it angrily away. I gave you every chance, every damn chance. So don't you come up here telling me you love me and acting like you're all concerned about Abigail's welfare. I'll find a job, a real job. Just tell me you're willing to give it a shot and I promise I'll quit with the music. Quit it straight away. She looked at him like he'd stabbed her. Quit your music? Nobody wants you to quit. You just need to get a plan and a little faith in yourself. Grow some goddamn balls, Jesse, and go after it. Okay, I'll get a plan and grow some goddamn balls. Hell, I'll do whatever it takes to stop it, Jesse. Stop it. It's too late. I've heard it all before. We both know nothing's gonna change. Just can't count on you, Jesse. No one can. You can't even count on yourself. Now you need to leave right now before Dillard gets back, before you screw this up too. Don't make... Daddy? A timid voice came from behind Linda. Mommy, is that Daddy? Linda gave Jesse a pained look, then opened the door wider. A little girl with long curly hair, wearing faded flannel PJs, stood peeking into the foyer. The girl saw Jessie and let out a squeal. "Daddy!" she cried. In came rushing to him. Jessie scooped her up, spun her around, and just hugged her, enjoying the crush of her little arms around his neck. She hugged him like she never wanted to let go. She hugged him like she never wanted to let him go. He pressed his nose into her hair and inhaled deeply, the smell of soggy Fruit Loops and baby shampoo, and it was the sweetest thing he'd ever smelled. "Daddy," she whispered in his ear, "did you bring me something?" He opened his eyes and found Linda staring at him. She didn't need to say a word. He knew her. You're not going to let her down again. He knew her, you're not going to let her down again look too well. Jessie set Abigail on the floor. "Was there something you wanted?" "I couldn't remember if there was or not. Last thing I recall you saying was to donate all your presents to charity." Abigail planted her hands on her hips and screwed up her face like she wanted to sock him. Then her eyes lit up as though just remembering something amazing. "Oh, Daddy, I gotta show you something." She started away, then slid to a stop. She held up a tiny finger. "I'll be right back, so don't go anywhere, okay? Okay?" "Promise," he said and smiled. But her sincerity pained him. He could see that she was truly afraid he might not be there when she returned. And why not? It's not like it hadn't happened before. Linda looked at his empty hands. Don't have nothing on you? Put it all towards booze, did you?" Jessie tried to look defeated. "You'll just have to see, won't you?" Abigail came running back, clutching a doll. "Look, Daddy, I got one, a teen tiger doll." "Now where'd that come from? Did Santa bring that?" "No, Dillard." Jessie felt as though he'd been punched. He did his best to smile while he looked the doll over. "Which one's this?" "It's Teresa Tiger. Ain't she cool?" I thought you wanted Tina Tiger." "I did, but they was all out down at the drugstore." "Well, I guess she's pretty A-okay. I mean, if that's the best old man could do. I can see how it might be that an old fart like Dillard wouldn't want to go driving all over Cretan to get you the one you really wanted. Elderly men like that, it's hard for them to sit for real long on account that they got hemorrhoids." He cupped his hand and whispered loudly, "Itchy buttholes." Abigail giggled. Linda shot him a sour look and said, "Why don't you ask your daddy what he got you?" Abigail set her big eyes on him. "Well, Abby Sugar Blossom, did you know that your daddy and Santa Claus just so happen to be real good buddies?" "Nuh-uh." "Yep, it's the God's honest truth. Why, we go fishing every now and again. As a matter of fact, we're such good buddies that he lent me his magic sack. Told me if I knew any good girls, I could give them whatever toys they wanted. Do you know any good little girls?" Abigail beamed and pointed at herself. "Now I want you to close your eyes and wish for any toy you want, Abigail. Shut your eyes tight. No peeking." "No peeking," Jessie called as he stepped back to the bush and retrieved the 2 garbage bags. Linda eyed the bags suspiciously as he sat them down in front of Abigail. "Okay." Abigail opened her eyes, saw 2 big bags, and gave her parents a questioning look. "Go on," Jessie said. "Open them." Abigail laid down her doll and pulled open the top of one of the bags. Her eyes grew wide. "Daddy?" she whispered, then opened the bag wider. She just stared, like she was afraid to move or even breathe. She slowly pulled out a teen tiger doll, then another, then let out an ear-piercing squeal. She clapped her hands, laughed, jumped up and down, and squealed some more as she emptied all the toys out onto the porch. "Daddy!" Abigail flung herself around his neck. Jessie hugged her back and stuck his tongue out at Linda. Linda was not smiling. She didn't look happy in the least. She looked like she wanted to jab her finger in his eye. "Abigail, dear," Linda said, her voice terse, "could you do me a favor and take all these inside? We don't want them to get messed up." Linda knelt down and started putting the dolls back in the sack. "Here, just take them. You can open them inside. That way you don't lose nothing." Abigail, practically dancing with excitement, dragged one of the sacks inside and down the hall. "I'll be there in a sec," Linda called. "Just need to have a word with your daddy." Jessie didn't like the way she said word. Linda sat the other bag inside the door and pulled it shut. She glared at him. "What'd I do now? You know exactly what you did," she snapped. "Where'd all them toys come from? Are they stolen?" She jabbed a finger at him. "Tell me, Jess, what kind of father gives his daughter stolen toys for Christmas?" Jessie held her eye. "They're not stolen." Linda didn't look convinced. "They're not stolen," Jess repeated. "They're not stolen," Jessie repeated. "And that's all you need to know. How come you always gotta think the worst of me? Are you telling me you bought these?" These seemed to make her even angrier. "You had cash and this is what you went and spent it on? All the things your daughter needs and you buy her toys?" She didn't finish. She just looked past him, her face stricken. Jessie turned and saw Chief Deaton's patrol car coming down the road.